said that she was wrong, so I fact checked you, and I found out that it does have antiviral. What do they call it?
Property. So what viruses does it treat?
There was two that they named off this at the top, and I don't remember them. I should have wrote them down, but all I did was Google does ivermectin cure viruses, and the first thing that popped up was no, that's false information. It's been proven wrong. But then I scrolled down, and the very first one that I scrolled down to says that it does have antiviral. They named.
So you're talking about the ivermectin, an award-winning drug with expected antiviral activity.
Correct.
So
correct. Read what it says. Read what it says. Read what it says underneath it. Read what it says underneath it.
Yeah. So again, it says a broad spectrum antiparasitic with demonstrated antiviral activity against a number of DNA and RNA viruses, including SARS-CoV-2 in vitro, right? These are in vitro studies. Do you know what that means?
No, I don't. All I saw was what it said. So I just
when you take ivermectin and put it in cell culture, so you have cells in a petri dish that are infected with the virus, and then you just squirt ivermectin into that cell culture, and you see, does it affect? So yes, in petri dish, it did have antiviral properties, which is why in the beginning they were like, oh, maybe ivermectin can work. But the dose of ivermectin that they used was super physiologic, meaning that the dose, if you were to give it to a human, would make them very sick. So if I put a whole jar of acid in a jar full of COVID cells infected with COVID, guess what? The COVID would be gone, so would the cells, right? So it's good in theory, but in practice, we have tons of studies, actual clinical trials looking at ivermectin in humans, actual human beings, that show that it has no effect on SARS-CoV-2.
Okay, well, I mean, you're a doctor, so. But my question is with all the vaccines that we've had over the years. Okay, I'm 62 years old, so I had all my vaccines as a kid growing up. All those studies of vaccines back then, if there was like 12 deaths to any of the vaccines, they automatically stopped it and did all kinds of studies, and then they'd have to do things to bring it back to make it okay. Okay, well, that's been happening here. How many people have died from taking the COVID vaccine?
So you're referring to probably
in the United States, 160,000 people.
That's not true.
That's what the numbers say online.
What you're referring to is VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. So, have you read the disclaimer on VAERS before accessing the data set?
What do you mean, the disclaimer on what?
On the data set that you're referring to, where there's 160,000 deaths.
No, I just scroll through and I do my investigations, and
so
that's
perhaps
what I've come up with. I've come up with many places that have told me that there's over 160,000 deaths, and then not only the deaths, but there's plenty of side effects that
so
people are dying.
Let's focus on the deaths. Let's focus on the deaths. So
okay, well, it doesn't matter if there's more than 12, it should be stopped.
So I'm gonna explain this to you.
So not. So, well, and you're a doctor. How many percentage of people die when they get COVID?
It depends on the people, right? It depends on age.
Okay, normal. Let's take the elderly and the very young.
We're gonna pause. We're not gonna gish gallop to the next topic, right? You brought up deaths from the COVID vaccine. That's what I'm gonna address right now, right? You're bringing something up. I'm gonna address it. Then we'll get to that. So you're referring to VAERS, right? The Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, which is a passive surveillance system that anyone can enter. And if you read the disclaimer, which I really do encourage you, because you do have to click that you've read and agreed to the disclaimer twice before actually accessing the VAERS data set. So my guess is you just skimmed past it, or you just read someone else's interpretation of it without actually referencing the data set yourself, which I do encourage you to fact check your
I probably read someone else's. You're probably right.
Okay, so don't do that. Actually, go to the source.
I wouldn't hit accept a thing if I didn't read the disclaimer. You know what I mean? I wouldn't hit accept.
So then you should be correct. Because the disclaimer in
correct.
VAERS says that you cannot use VAERS to draw a causal inference to whatever's in there. So meaning that whatever's in VAERS, you can't say, aha, that's due to the vaccine, because it's a passive surveillance system. So what happens is things get reported to VAERS and then they get investigated. Because if you look at VAERS, there are things like someone put that their pet died in VAERS. Do you think that was due to a vaccine?
No.
Okay, someone put that they got divorced in VAERS, that they got herpes in VAERS. There's actually lots of cases of herpes and chlamydia and gonorrhea. Someone put that they had an itchy anus in VAERS. So anyone could put anything in VAERS. And there are deaths put in VAERS. But again, when you investigate those deaths, there is no safety signal. Because again, when people get back, it's not...
Okay, with that being said, I'll believe what you're saying. Okay, let's say what you're saying is true. You're a doctor. You look like an honest person. But people have died from taking the vaccine, have they not?
Yes, people have died from
how many? Do you know how many?
So in the United States, it's maybe a little over a dozen. In Europe, probably a little more than that, just because
I know two people that died from it.
Okay, so again, we're gonna hold off on anecdotes, right? We're talking about statistics, right? And I'm talking about theirs. So when people get vaccinated, it doesn't make them immortal. They're still going to suffer from other things after getting vaccinated, including death, right? It doesn't prevent you from dying from anything, right? It prevents you or provides you with protection against dying from COVID and complications from COVID. Now, if you look at VAERS and look at some of the deaths that are in there, there's suicides, homicides, car accidents, people who have had cancer and died from cancer, people who have died from COVID. So again, they look at those deaths and they try to see, is there a safety signal? Now, there have been safety signals that have caused a pause in vaccine rollout. So I'm using the Johnson & Johnson vaccine as an example. So because of VAERS, it's a passive surveillance system, and other vaccine surveillance systems that we have in this country and around the world, we recognized a very rare blood clotting disorder called vaccine-induced. Well, at the time it didn't have a name because it was new, because it was associated with the vaccine. There were 7 cases of this rare blood clotting disorder. Some of the cases were fatal. 7 cases out of 7 million doses. So we detected a 1 in a million adverse event from a vaccine that paused the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and then actually wound up decommissioning it, saying we're not going to use this vaccine anymore. The same thing with AstraZeneca, which is the same similar vaccine to Johnson & Johnson, similar technology, that caused a vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia, which people have died from. So as a result, they stopped that, and they no longer administer Johnson & Johnson in this country, in other countries, and they've heavily restricted the use of AstraZeneca in other countries because of this rare side effect. So if what you're saying is true, that there have been 160,000 plus deaths that we're completely ignoring, that we're continuing the rollout of the vaccine, then why on earth did we stop a vaccine for a 1 in a million rare side effect, but 160,000 deaths we're not doing? How do you make those two claims coincide with one
Because
another?
they're trying to kill us.
Then why did they stop the other vaccine?
Well, have you seen? Do you know what WEF is? Do you know who Klaus Schwab is?
The World Economic Forum. We're going
You know who Klaus Schwab is?
I'm just asking you first, logically, how do you make that make sense? A 1 in a million rare side effect that did result in some deaths. We stopped using that vaccine, but somehow the same database that caused us to stop using that vaccine is showing 160,000 plus deaths. That is not enough to make us stop the vaccine.
Yeah, it is.
But then why did we stop one
That's
vaccine?
what I'm saying. Why haven't we stopped it? I know two people who died right after taking the vaccine. 2 people. They were a married couple. Okay, they were only 50-something years old. They had no problems. They took the vaccine and they both died.
I'm not going to comment on anecdotes because I don't know their medical history. I don't know anything. I have anecdotes too. All of my friends, everyone I know is vaccinated. No one's died. So I have anecdotes. You have anecdotes. That's why we have to come back to the data. And I'm just asking you how to rationalize the thought.
Can you ask me this question? Why are they paying people to take this vaccine? Why?
So what do you mean paying people to take the vaccine?
People get paid to take. They get $50 to take the shot, to take the vaccine, and then they get $75 to take the booster.
Okay, so sometimes people incentivize people to do things. I can't comment on that. We live in a capitalist society. And I'm just asking you to try to rationalize that. I'm trying to ask you to just think rationally for 1 second. So again, the same database that you're referring to that said that there's 160,000 deaths due to the vaccine, we're completely ignoring. But a 1 in a million rare side effect that didn't always result in death, we stopped using the vaccine. So why did we ignore the 160,000 deaths, but the 7 cases of this rare blood clotting disorder were enough for us to stop the vaccine entirely? So 7 cases of a rare blood clotting disorder, stop the vaccine. 160,000 deaths, keep on keeping on. Why is that? Where is that disconnect coming from?
Where are you getting? There's only 7 of the blood clot things. Have you seen the video? Have you seen the video of the mortuary people?
Died suddenly.
They're saying that all of their corpses are coming in with what you're talking about. All of them.
I want you to just think rationally about this, right? Because what they're saying is that when people die, they have their entire arterial system is just a clot. So when someone develops a clot in a blood vessel, they experience some symptoms, right? But they're saying these people have their entire arterial system is just a cast of blood clots, and they were walking around fine, and then all of a sudden died. So how do you make sense of the fact that they've had a gigantic clot in their body that they experienced no symptoms from whatsoever, and then all of a sudden died? And do you know what agonal thrombi are, and how they form, when they form, and how they're experienced in the post-mortem care of a deceased?
No, I don't. I'm not a doctor.
Agonal thrombi form, right? Those are thrombi, those are blood clots that form at the period surrounding death, because as someone is dying, their blood flow is sluggish and they can develop clots. Now, there's actually a really good research article and a really good review article by a mortuary scientist who explains that these clots that they're finding in the corpses are actually pretty common. And those are things that they find routinely when they embalm bodies. Now, I want to reference the Died Suddenly documentary that you're talking about, because there have been so many instances of things presented in that documentary that have proven to be false. For example, there was a woman saying that they're finding clots in live people, and they showed a surgery, a very graphic looking surgery of someone extracting what they said was a blood clot from a heart, a beating heart. Now, when I saw that as a physician, I said, that looks suspiciously like a pulmonary embolectomy. It's a surgery where you remove a blood clot from someone's pulmonary artery. And I said, I've seen that video before because I've used it in talks about pulmonary emboli. And I looked it up and it was from 2019. It was from an educational video in 2019. So how do you explain that blood clot being caused by the COVID vaccine in 2019 when there was no COVID vaccine?
Okay, well, how do you explain?
I asked you a question. I
don't know. I'm not a doctor. I can't explain that. I'm not a doctor.
So again, so it's because it wasn't related to the COVID vaccine. Like, I think you're a rational enough guy to say, like, you can't blame a blood clot in 2019 on a vaccine that didn't exist yet, right?
Right.
So does that give you pause if a documentary is falsely representing something like that? And not to mention all the people that they showed collapsing. There were people who collapsed from things that were completely unrelated to vaccines. There were people who collapsed from, times before the vaccine. And there were all these incidences of them using clips out of context or clips that were completely unrelated. I just find it very funny that, when doctors try to talk about the vaccine, there's so much burden of proof is on us. Like, you got to prove, and if we say one thing that doesn't agree with what you say, it's 100% false. Yet you'll believe a documentary that is objectively lying to you, that they are showing you clips that have nothing to do with the vaccine, and you're using that as your proof that the vaccines are dangerous.
Okay, I have a question for you because you're a doctor. Maybe you know how to come up with the correct answer for me. I was curious to find out how many people died every year from the influenza every year before COVID came. Okay, before COVID came, how many people died every year from the flu? And I see all these numbers from way back when, but when it comes to 2019, 2020, 21, 22, and 23, I can't find any numbers. Why? Can you tell me how many people died of influenza last year, of just regular flu that wasn't COVID?
In 2022?
I can't find the information anywhere. It just keeps kicking me back to old numbers. It won't give me any new numbers. I feel that the number of people that died of the flu went way down since 2019, since COVID hit. I bet you the regular flu numbers are way, way, way down.
So the 2022 flu season is still provisional data. So meaning that they haven't calculated it all. It takes time.
So back to 21.
So in 2022, there were 17,000 to 98,000 flu deaths based on projection. I can look it up in 2021.
And that's just in the United States, correct?
Hmm?
How did you find
during
that
the
number?
2021-2022 influenza season, there were 9 million illnesses, 4 million medical visits, 10,000 hospitalizations, and 5,000 deaths. The influenza burden was similar to the burden observed during the 2011-2012 flu season. First thing that came up when you search it on Google.
That's not what came up for me.
Try it again. It's there.
So the number in 2021 was the same as in 2011 and 2012?
Similar to the flu season. Remember, flu seasons vary. Some are worse than others.
Well, that is it. Didn't we go through a so-called pandemic then too with what was it called? The
swine flu. That was in 2012, 2013 flu season.
Okay. So how many people died in 2013, 2014, 2015? There was like 30,000 deaths each year, wasn't it?
It varies. Some 30,000. There were some years where it was 80,000. 2018 was a particularly bad flu season. It was around 80,000 people who died from the flu. Okay.
Then how come all of a sudden you think that 5,000 number is a good number for 2021?
I just said it was comparable to a prior flu season.
Okay. Well, you're defending that number. You don't see any correspondence with 80,000 deaths a couple years before, all the way down to only 5?
Well, again,
they were calling all those COVID deaths. They were calling them COVID, and they weren't. They were just a flu.
That's not true because we have.
It is true. They were just a flu.
So where is your evidence to support that we were labeling flu deaths as COVID?
How do you go from 80,000 down to 5,000?
Well, if you look, we can look at flu data across years, right? Because there are some where it's like there was.
I'm just throwing that at you. I mean, you seem like a pretty level guy.
Okay,
I'm throwing that at you. Doesn't that shock you?
We just said that in 2011 there were 5,000 flu deaths, and then in 2012 there were more, and then there were less, and then there were more, and then there were less. So
But if you look over the years, if you look over the past 100 years of deaths, it averages like 30,000 a year. All of a sudden, it's down to 5,000 in 2021. I couldn't find that number.
But sir, with all due respect, we just said that in 2011 there were also 5,000 deaths, and guess what? There was no.
Well, yeah. Guess what? They're getting ready to release another vaccine, another virus on us, weren't they? They did. They released another virus on us in 2011, didn't they?
No.
Yes, that's what the data's telling me.
Strain of the flu. That happened again. That happens sometimes. Sometimes the flu season.
They were creating they were getting ready to create the coronavirus. They failed in 2012. They failed with it. They didn't kill enough people. You know they're trying to kill people with this virus. It's not a pandemic. It's a plandemic. They released it on us, and you know it.
So let's talk about this. So what?
It was not an accident.
What is the purpose of killing?
It was not an accident.
Let's. I want you to rationally explain to me what is the purpose of creating a virus to kill the population.
It goes back to Klaus Schwab.
Okay, what is that? What does he have to do with it?
He said he got to get rid of 2/3 of the population.
Why?
I don't know why. He's a sick man. That's why.
So how did he do it? Tell me.
Vaccines, COVID, wars.
Mm-hmm. It's very powerful.
Yeah, all of that. Abortions, all of that.
So if abortions,
the medical doctors not helping their patients.
Why are we banning?
What kind of a doctor are you
in this country? Why are we banning abortions in this country if it's part of?
I don't know what your field is in doctor. What kind of doctor are you? An intern?
Internist.
What's that?
I'm an internal medicine doctor, general medicine doctor. I work in the hospital.
Okay, just general. You work in the hospitals. Okay, so you know that the hospitals get paid like $40,000 for every COVID patient they claim they have, don't they?
So no, that's not true. So you realize that the hospital gets paid for
every. That's not true. That's what I heard. Are you sure about that?
I am sure about that because I am a doctor and I have to bill Medicare and Medicaid. So yes, I am aware of that.
So you don't get how much money does the hospital get when a patient dies in their hospital of COVID?
So we don't get paid any money for a death, right? We can't bill insurances after patients have died. So we don't get paid per death.
By the government, I'm talking.
No, I'm talking about the Medicare, Medicaid. We don't get paid by them either.
I'm talking the government. The government gives the hospitals $40,000. That's what I heard. $40,000 for every hospital, for every patient that died in their hospital of COVID. And they were having people come in car accidents, and they were brought in from a car accident.
Because I think
they ended up having COVID, and they said that the claim of death was COVID.
Sir, you're a little confused. When you say the government, that's what I'm talking about. Medicare and Medicaid are government-funded insurances, right?
Yes, you're right.
Okay, so what you're talking about is the CARES Act that was passed by Donald Trump and his Congress in 2020, which said that they were going to give a 20% above Medicare reimbursement rate for COVID patients at a time when hospitals were just overwhelmed with COVID patients and they were losing money because when the hospitals were full of COVID patients, the hospitals weren't able to do the procedures like surgeries, like elective procedures, like hip replacement, knee replacement, things like endoscopies, cardiac catheterizations, procedures that generate the hospital money. So hospitals were losing money hand over fist because they couldn't do that. So what they did was that if you had a COVID patient and you had to prove that the patient had COVID, you couldn't just say, this patient's got COVID, whatever, I'm going to scam Medicare and Medicaid. You proved that, and then you got 20% above what Medicare would traditionally reimburse you for a patient with a similar medical condition. Now, what you're referring to, the 40,000 number, was actually something like $32,000, and that was for a critically ill patient in the ICU who was intubated and on a ventilator. Now, I don't know if you know this, but those patients are very sick. They require a lot of resources, and patients who are sick, who have more medical complexity, more medical issues, require more medical care, are billed at a higher rate to Medicare, Medicaid, or private insurance because it requires more money to take care of them. But you can't fraud Medicare by saying this patient has COVID when they actually don't, because when you submit a bill, that gets sent to a billing department who reviews your documentation. And I'm saying from personal experience that if I submit a bill and my documentation doesn't support the diagnoses that I'm billing for, the billing and compliance department comes back to me and says, hey, you billed for X, Y, and Z, your note doesn't reflect that. What's up? And if then Medicare audits those charts and sees that, guess what? The hospital loses Medicare reimbursement and the hospital goes under. So what you're suggesting is widespread Medicare fraud. So I'm wondering, where is your evidence to support that?
That's just what I heard going around on the internet. Okay, let me ask you this. What state are you in?
New York.
Okay, I'm in California. And when this pandemic started, I want to say I was in the hospital in the emergency room. It was early 2020, I think. Let me think. Yeah, early 2020. No, 2021. Okay, I was in the emergency room. I had they had to drain liquid out of my knee. All right. So I was in the emergency room, and I heard all over the news that, oh, the emergency rooms are jammed, the hospitals are overflowing, there's no beds available. And I was in this hospital in California, in Anaheim. Okay, it's a big area. There's a lot of people. Okay, so I was expecting when I had to go to the hospital that I'm going to be waiting forever. There was nobody in the emergency room. I've been to the emergency room in in the 2000s, in the 1900s. Okay, every time I ever went to an emergency room, there's 100 people in there waiting, and it takes forever to get in. Okay, and I was expecting there'd be 500 people there, and I couldn't get in. There was nobody there. I got right in. There was nobody in any of the beds in the emergency room at all. I was the only one in there.
Okay, and what about the rest of the hospital?
I didn't get to walk through the rest of the hospital, but there was no vehicle. But you know what? They had tents set up outside, like canopies, and they had security guards. And they wouldn't let you just walk in like you used to, like if you're homeless around there, they used to let the homeless people walk in the emergency room and use the restroom. Okay, they weren't allowing that at the point. They had security guards there, and there was nobody in the emergency room.
Okay,
how do you explain that?
So that's your anecdote. Right?
No, it's not mine. It's not an anecdote. I saw it with my own eyes. I know for a fact.
With all due respect, that's what an anecdote is, right? That's what an anecdote is. It's your own personal experience. You're telling me that, right? So again, I can't disprove that. I wasn't there. I wasn't a doctor in California. But, and again, I don't know at what point during the pandemic you went. You said in 2021. I don't know what the COVID burden was in Anaheim at that point. But my anecdote is different from yours, right? Because I was a physician at the beginning of the pandemic during COVID-19 in March 2020 in New York City. Our emergency rooms were busting at the seams. Our healthcare system almost collapsed. So I'm not sure what you're trying to get at, that, your personal experience somehow dictates how the entire world experienced COVID. But with all due respect, that's just not how it works.
Well, I was shocked because I've always depended on doctors to help me with with any problems I had. You guys took an oath that you would do that, right? And not harm any of your patients, correct? Okay. Well, I was wondering, why would doctors be in on giving a vaccine that they know is no good?
So
that's going to harm people. It wasn't making sense to me. It wasn't making sense to me because doctors wouldn't do that.
Well, it doesn't.
Right?
Okay, so then you're almost at the point, right? You're almost at the point. We're going to get you there. So you said doctors took an oath to do no harm. And you're like, well, how are they promoting a vaccine that I heard was bad? Maybe it's because the vaccine isn't bad. The doctors are evidence-based practitioners, that they're doing what is in line with their Hippocratic oath to do no harm, to give a give a vaccine that obviously has risks. Everything has risks in medicine. Nothing is without risk. But the risk doesn't outweigh the benefit. And that's why we're doing it, right? Because what you're hearing is incorrect. And everything that you stated here that I've said and debunked, you haven't acknowledged. You just moved on to the next topic. So I have to agree.
I got you. I see what you're saying. But I'm 62 years old. Okay, I've been around for a long time. And when I'm scratching my head about something like this, there's something there. I just can't put my finger on it. And have you ever heard of med beds?
No.
You never heard of the med bed? Supposedly, this bed that's gonna like cure certain things in your body. It's kind of like what do they call those when you go through the machine and they scan your whole body? What's that called?
MRI.
Yeah, when that machine comes all the way through you and scans you and everything, your whole body, right? Okay, it's an MRI machine. You're correct. Okay, well, these med beds are like those supposedly, and while they're scanning you, they're gonna know everything that's wrong with you, arthritis, anything that you have, and they're gonna be able to fix it with lasers. You never heard of this?
Oh wow, and they're gonna do that for free?
No, not for free.
So
obviously,
not pay for it.
What?
So insurance is gonna pay for it?
No, supposedly these med beds are going to become available, and obviously, what happens with all new technology?
Make money off of that. Who
get it first? The rich people get it first. Then it goes to them. Then it goes. I mean, the wealthy people get it first. Then it goes to the rich people. Then it goes to the middle class, which there pretty much are no more middle class. Then it goes to the poor.
Where's the evidence to support that med beds work?
There isn't. I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. Have you heard of them?
Again, so full body scans.
Have you heard of them?
So full body scans. I saw the thing that Kim Kardashian posted, right? So full body scans are extraordinarily expensive, thousands of dollars. and are not covered by insurance, because when you scan someone's body, chances you find something called an incidentaloma, meaning that it shows something like a cyst or an area of inflammation that has no medical consequence, but that results in then that patient having to undergo a procedure, a surgery, medications, therapies to find out that this is just a nothing burger, and that costs more money. It puts more burden on a healthcare system that is already sort of under an immense amount of strain. So, and then that's not to say that full body scans haven't detected early cases of pancreatic cancer in certain patients, but then you have to say the risk benefit of putting patients through a financial burden of having this when no insurance company is going to pay for it. And so if you can provide me with evidence that med beds have a benefit to humans, I would be more than happy to entertain it.
Well, I'm surprised that when I asked you about med beds, you just had this blank stare on your face, like you never heard of them. You said you never heard of them. You told me you never heard of them. All right, yeah, I don't know why you would tell me that.
I've never heard of them referred to.
I'm sitting here scratching my head over all this stuff, right? And I'm wondering why would doctors do this? Why would doctors do this to the human beings that they're supposed to protect? Give vaccines when they know that it's going to kill them. Okay, I'm sitting here scratching my head. And then when I heard about these med beds, you know who I heard talk about med beds? You know who I heard?
Kim Kardashian.
No. Donald Trump mentioned med beds, okay? All right? Donald Trump mentioned med beds, all right? So when I heard that, now I'm putting two and two together. Doctors are doing this because you guys are becoming obsolete. We're not going to need you anymore.
Cool. Donald Trump also got vaccinated.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, he did.
None of those politicians did. None of those politicians did. Shut up. They took saline solution. You know that.
Yeah.
Just like you did. You didn't take no vaccine.
I took all my vaccines, sir.
Bullshit. If you're a doctor, you didn't take them.
Yeah, I did.